This time it came from the low elevation adjacent to him. As he looked to where the shrieking came from, he saw a black shadow dart behind a giant gnarled willow. Again, his body tingled from the burst of adrenaline. He began to quicken his pace. The laughter once again tainted the morning air, this time coming from behind him. I am losing my mind, he thought. Off to his right he saw another flash of blackness darting through the brush. His eyes strained, trying to focus on the apparition. It was a person for sure, dressed all in black, wearing a hat or hood. The figure hobbled quickly, keeping pace with him. There was also a rustling of leaves behind him. At one instance, the cloaked figure peered up at him, its cold eyes focusing on him briefly before smiling a sinister grin. It was the witch. She had found him. He remembered the shaman's water given to him by Whitfurrows. As he stumbled along, he fumbled for the vial and drank the water. He wasn't sure what it was supposed to do, but after a few minutes of waiting and trying to watch the witch's movements, he had forgotten all about it. She continued to keep pace and glance up at him, making certain he was still in view. After a time, he could no longer see her in the valley. Had he lost her? Just when he was beginning to believe she had given up, he heard the sound of rustling leaves behind him. He began to run once again. His legs were so numb and heavy that he stumbled and crashed to the ground. He heard a horrible shriek. Then all went black. Adain took his seat at the meeting. All 12 elders and a few high-ranking military men were there. Arinkad sat in the king's chair in the front. He looked around at those in the room with a grave expression. As some of you already are aware, we have gotten word that the full force of the Soel army intends to march on Ashdorn, began the king. The full force? Asked one of the elders. How many do you speak of exactly? The reports vary. Some have suggested up to 8,000, said the king. I wouldn't call 8,000 their full force, said one. It may as well be, said Arinkad. We have no means to defend against half that. The repairs to the castle have not been finished. Our supplies have not been fully restocked. We are low on men and funds. We have only one choice. You do not mean for us to surrender, said one of the elders. What is the time frame for all of this? 3 weeks. Maybe 4. It is difficult to say exactly. As we speak, efforts are being made to find the whereabouts of my father's, the nation's treasure. We can only hope it will be enough to buy our freedom. What about the wizard? Asked Adain. Does anyone know where he was going? Surely there must be some way to find him. And what of the elephant riders? No, my friend. The wizard has abandoned us. The elephant riders won't be coming. Ulgrim, defender of Ashdorn, has left us. I am afraid we are alone once again, said the king regretfully. What about fleeing to the fortress south? Asked one of the captains. I have considered it. But without the funds, the treasure, going to the fortress would only buy us some time, said Arinkad. A little time can work wonders, said the captain. It can also make things worse. It would merely prolong the inevitable. I will say no more. The king looked around at his men intently. I expect that you all will stay and face this together. If you wish to be like the wizard and Ulgrim, leave now, though I hope you will not. In the meantime, we will make every effort to reinforce the walls and prepare as if they are to attack. Let us hope that is not their intent. Several weeks earlier Longfellow and Losgrel were still in the Wolflandian dungeon. Longfellow laid there in the cold damp dungeon with only a pile of old straw between him and the stone floor. He had lost track of how many nights he had spent in there. Was it day? Was it night? He hadn't any idea. The only light was a torch or two, near the far side of the dungeon where the guard barracks was. Every so often a guard would come by and ask him if he had remembered any more details regarding the Atlantean. Each time he told them he didn't know, or maybe that he had gone home, but he really didn't know. Neither Burdock nor Losgrel had told him where they sent Milo. Why didn't they just kill us? He said to himself. It would be better to die than spend one more day in this horrible stinking place. He began to despair. In his mind, he imagined having to get old and die in this place. Or contracting some horrible disease from the vermin that infested the dungeon. Or what if they decided to turn him into a slave? All these things he thought of over and over. Meanwhile, Losgrel tried several times to bargain with the guards and use other psychological tricks that he had learned in his training. He tried several times to get them close enough so that he could pickpocket the cell key from them, but they were clever and would not get close enough. It was not in Losgrel to give up. He would simply try to think of another way to trick them. The guards also did not give up. They continued to ask Losgrel regularly about Milo, sometimes even threatening him with physical violence. He tried to keep himself fit both physically and mentally, which was not an easy task because they only gave them enough food to sustain them. And the food was barely fit for farm animals. One particular morning, when Longfellow didn't think he could face another day, 2 guards banged their cell keys against the bars, startling him. Get up. Your presence is demanded. Move. At the same time, guards were at Losgrel's cell. They banged on the bars of the cell with some piece of wood or metal interrupting his morning routine. Look, he trains for the dungeon gold medal, said a guard followed by laughter. Let's go. Your presence is demanded. The 2 men were brought out and led past the barracks to a hallway. Longfellow looked at Losgrel with great concern as they were marched out of the dungeon.